Mental illness is not pretty. It's not easily understood and can be a shattering experience for the mentally ill and their families. Because of the misconceptions of what mental illness is and how it affects the patient, the family, and the community, there is little understanding or acceptance. According to John Adams, medical director of the Crosse County Guidance Clinic, mental illness can be defined as...
There are a number of different kinds of mental illness. When we're talking about mental illness, we generally are referring to major mental illnesses. When an illness affects a person's brain, that then affects everything about them, because after all, the brain is a controlling part of our body and the most important organ in our body. Illnesses that I'm referring to are ones like schizophrenia, manic depressive illness, major depression, things like that, that tend to have a rather long-lasting effect. They don't just come one day and leave the next, but are there for perhaps years, sometimes all of a person's life.
Confusion, fright, and torment are part of the life of a person who suffers from mental illness.
Mainly it's a feeling of unhappiness and despair.
Because I feel despair, I feel lonely. I get very scared. It's a very lonely feeling too.
There are times that I can get down and discouraged, and life is so meaningless.
All my life I've said that there's a reason and a purpose for everything that happens in this world. I'm not always sure what it is, but I will know someday. And with that kind of attitude, I've gone through some rough times, and I've gotten myself out of the rough times too.
Schizophrenia usually begins between the ages of 16 and 25. After the age of 30, the onset of the disease becomes uncommon, and after 40, it becomes rare. The onset of mental illness is disruptive to the family, and family members often blame themselves.
The stigma of mental illness is very hard on families. Having a mentally ill person live at home is very disruptive to a family. I think the most difficult thing for families is ignorance. Who knows anything about mental illness? And certainly nobody in your family will ever be struck with a mental illness. We thought, what have we done? Where have we gone wrong? How should we have changed the way that we were bringing him up?
Mental illness strikes 1 out of every 14 Americans sometime during their lifetime. Besides the tragic personal aspects of this disease, direct care costs are estimated to be $36 billion, with indirect costs totaling an enormous $67.4 billion. Contrary to the popular stereotype, schizophrenia is a treatable disease, but obtaining treatment for the mentally ill can often be a difficult and frustrating experience.
First initial step would be to try to talk that individual into receiving treatment on a voluntary basis. Wisconsin statutes allow for an individual under certain circumstances to be committed for treatment. That means that they would essentially be required to participate in a treatment program that was determined to be the most effective for them. The criteria in Wisconsin state that an individual must, first of all, be mentally ill. The second condition which must be met is that the individual is dangerous. When the relative would contact the La Crosse County Human Services Department, they would be directed, or they could ask to be directed, to the court and intervention unit, and we would help them process the petition, investigate whether or not there were grounds for that petition, and give the individual some advice on how to handle the particulars of their case.
Throughout all procedures, the person's rights are always first and foremost, often hindering the family's attempts to secure treatment.
It's important to stress the issue that individuals have both the right to treatment as well as the right to refuse treatment if they do not want it.
On a per-patient basis, the federal research dollar is substantially higher for physical illnesses than for mental illnesses. We spend only 14 research dollars for each patient with schizophrenia and $10 for those with major depressive disorders. This compares to $130 for heart disease, $161 for multiple sclerosis, and $1,000 for muscular dystrophy. County programs play an important part in the lives of the mentally ill. The Community Support Program offers its clients many vital services, including skills needed for living and working in the community.
We work with everyone who really touches their lives. We work with the individual clients to help them develop the skills that they need to live in the community. We do have a drop-in center that is open during set hours during the week. We have an activity group that helps them to plan recreational activities and hopefully develop the skills that they'll transfer over into their daily life.
Clients who are involved in the Community Support Program receive numerous services, including medication supervision and employment assistance.
A client has to be proven dangerous to themselves or other people in order to be court committed, in order to take medication. They're administered by me setting them up on an individual basis. Sometimes they pick them up daily. Sometimes the clients pick them up 3 times a week, once a week or twice a week. Usually if they're not taking their meds, you can verify that by their behavior. It usually decompensates. If a person does refuse their medications that are not court committed, I also try to talk to them and reason with them that their behavior is usually better with the medication, and usually they are willing to see that the medications do help and their home life is better with the medications.
We follow about 110 clients right now, and about half of them are working. We find that the person is very conscientious about what they do. Employers have told me that they do a better job than some of their co-workers. I've seen people come out of sheltered workshop settings who have gone into a community-based work situation, and they've just blossomed. I get real positive comments from both the client and the employer, and it's just real good to see.
Hospital outpatient programs provide an opportunity for social and recreational outlets, as well as counseling and therapy sessions. Halfway houses and outpatient programs offer a wide range of services for the mentally ill. Social companionship and support, shared responsibilities, day programs, and therapy provide an alternative to hospitalization.
We attempt to teach them the skills that they will need in order to function as independently as possible. Anytime a mentally ill person in the community is experiencing any kind of problem, they know that they can come in, talk with staff, get some counseling. It's always very gratifying seeing that person in turn being able to go out into the community. A halfway house or a group home is also a very economical alternative to hospitalization. It's saving the taxpayers a great deal of money.
The purpose of day treatment is primarily to provide an alternative to hospitalization. It's always been really well integrated into the community mental health treatment system. Works very closely with the County Guidance Clinic, County Community Support Team, Division of Vocational Rehabilitation.
Finally, being able to live on their own, often after years of treatment and hospitalization, can be an enormous positive step.
It took months, but I finally got out. It makes me feel pretty proud of myself that I'm achieving so much.
Contrary to popular myths, the mentally ill usually are no more dangerous than the rest of the population.
I think that the dangerousness of the mentally ill gets a lot of bad publicity. The mentally ill people that we treat in La Crosse are really more afraid of the general population than the general population is afraid of the mentally ill. The people that get committed, we find most of them are committed because of dangerousness to themselves rather than because of dangerousness to other people.
Mental illness is not discriminatory. It strikes the affluent, disadvantaged, and all social and economic classes. The stigma of mental illness is tragic and cruel. Understanding and acceptance are badly needed.
These are people who really need our help. If we have some compassion toward them and some understanding of what kind of problems they really have in functioning in their life, I think we can understand and accept that they need our support much better.
Mental illness is devastating for the patient. Confusion, loneliness, and fear are parts of their lives. But with proper treatment, guidance, and counseling, rays of hope may appear.
People, we're human, we have feelings, our feelings get hurt, or we have good feelings at times. We just have a harder time dealing with our feelings, I think. We have a harder time feeling well than most people do. And I think I just want to be treated as an equal.
The important thing for other people to understand is that I'd say everyone is capable of having emotional problems at one time or another in their life. And if they would say to themselves, someday this might be me having these problems, what would I want? What would I like to have if I had these problems? Then they could see themselves what it's like to have a mental illness.
Only by opening our hearts and our minds will we begin to dispel the myths and stigmas of this disease, and by doing so, learn, accept, and understand the plight of the mentally ill.